look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Content is king. So if you have some content you need created, hit up iopvideo.com. Video production, podcasting, you name it, we can do it. iopvideo.com. We make things look pretty.
All right, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, yourselves in for a wonderful ride, because right now you're listening to the sounds of the voice party. All right,
Yeah.
so please, Sandra, introduce yourselves to the party goers out there and tell us what you do.
Sure. My name is Sandra Martin, and I am a community educator / peer counselor, volunteering for an organization called Conscious Voices African American Wellbeing Center. And Conscious Voices is an African American mental health organization based out of Oakland, California. I'm not sure if you want to continue with questions, but that's just like the brief intro, because I can just keep on talking if you want me
to. Yeah, no. So how long has this you said the organization itself has been around for a while, but you just currently took over operations? Is that what you mentioned earlier?
No, so the organization officially got its 501c3 certification, so it's a nonprofit organization.
Okay.
It got its certification in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And how the organization came about was because in 2011, Alameda County put out an African American utilization report, and in that report, they basically said that their services were not effective for African Americans. And after that, in 2012,
can I interrupt real quick? Just to clarify, what services were they talking about in that report?
Their healthcare and mental health care services.
Okay.
And so so then in 2012, there was an African American Innovation Grant. And what that grant was for was money set aside to do research and projects on how to improve the services in Alameda County for African Americans. From that money's, Conscious Voices was a 2-time recipient for there's this Mental Health Services Act. And what that is it's a 1% tax on income over $1 million, and this is throughout the state of California. So each county gets that 1% tax. They get a piece of the pie.
Right.
And
to put it back into the community in this, for instance, for you guys, it funds the classes that you guys do. That's just one of the things that it funds, right?
No, we're actually not receiving any of that money this year. And they actually just did their recertification to where like they pick organizations that get that money, and it's for the next 3 years. So of that money, actually only 1% of that money is actually being used for African Americans, whereas we're like 15% of the population. And part of what we're trying to do as organization is mobilize and bring together our community so we can say, hey, look, we need to work together on these different things, because technically, even though that 1% of the income over $1 million, Alameda County gets a portion of that. So even though there's legislation to help, in the mental health care field, and there's, there's the demographics and the population showing, there's, 15% African Americans. So even though the money that, there's legislation set aside to have this money, there isn't any legislation saying, of that money's 15% of it should be spent on African Americans and, African American programs.
Right. You said what percentage of
That
African
money,
Americans? Oh no, what percentage of African Americans make up the
the
overall
Alameda
population
County.
of
So
Oakland?
we're like,
Alameda.
roughly we're like 15% of Alameda County, right? But
Wow.
only 1% of that money is being spent,
Yeah.
on us, for us. But
Right.
because we're not aware of any of this going on, like we can't even stand up and say, hey, let's do something about that.
And you know what else that money goes towards? I mean, do you guys like what other services are funded by that?
So part of those monies go to, the general fund in Oakland, like part of those monies goes to that. Part of the general fund goes to the police force. So you can always trace the money and you can always
Yes.
see it. But if there's no one there looking to say, hey, wait a minute,
Yep.
why aren't you guys, and if there aren't enough of us present at the table where these conversations are happening,
Right.
then we get left out. Because let's say, and I'm not, I'm biracial, but let's just say, Latinos are there at the table. They're gonna make sure they get money for them. You know what I mean? Like, cause that's
Right.
their struggle. Like they're struggling to make sure they get that money. So if there's nobody at the table for blacks, then there's nobody there to make sure that we get the money. Get that part. So that's just one thing that has popped up on my radar since I've been working with the organization. The part that I actually do, so like I'm passionate about this, but my time is, we only have so much, and there's always more work to be done.
Right.
So
That's a big one, because a lot of these, everyone has the help is available to everybody, but if you're not there when the decision is being made, it really just kind of it screws over the whole that you're part of the community.
right. So again, so we were recipients of that money at one point, but there's this whole other scandal going on. Like, we know who got the money, and we were working with the people who got the money, and the people who got the money said that they were going to work with us and give us part of that money, but that actually didn't happen.
Yeah.
And now the county's like, well, your beef is with them and not with us.
Wow.
So, and this is for 3 years of funding that, like, our name and everything was all up in the proposal for this money. And then what happened was the proposal, the step that goes from the proposal to the actual contract that says what's going to happen, somehow we dropped out of it. And the county didn't enforce this organization to follow by their proposal.
And just so our listeners understand, for you guys, if you were to get this money, what is that fund? Just for those people that are just tuning in.
What would it fund?
Yeah, what does your organization do? Like it provides mental health services.
Oh, so we provide a few different services. One service we provide, or we have therapists that work within the organization. So we have a fee for service for therapy. So if you have insurance, we're able to bill the insurance and pay our therapists for seeing you. So that's one service that those monies wouldn't mess with, because we're billing insurance. But the other services we offer are healing circles. And as a whole organization, part of our model and what we're trying to push for is a new approach to mental health, a new approach to healing, specifically for the African American community. So typical research says, someone has trauma or someone has some type of, mental health issue, depression, anxiety, the whole gamut of why they would go see the therapist. Traditionally says, go see a one-on-one therapist, and they'll prescribe a treatment plan for you. You go through it, and you're better, right?
Right.
The traditional plan or route. But again, remember, Alameda County, they put out the report saying our services are not, helping Black people, African Americans. Our services aren't helping you guys, right? So that's the report that they put out. That's the research that they did, and that's what they found, right? So here we have this this report that's out. Here we have all these mental health care workers, therapists, social workers, what have you. They've been trained a certain way, right? So what our motto is saying is that not only does an African American need to be seen on an individual basis, but the African American needs to also be in group sessions, and within those groups, there has to be the organization and the goal of pushing back on the system, or the goal of fixing that community issue that has you stressed out in the first place. So let's say we have a group of mothers who they have their Black sons that are being treated unfairly in the school system, right? So the mom is stressing out, their sons are continually getting suspended, then they have to take off work to go take care of this issue at school, and then they lose their job because they have to take off work so much. So now they're depressed, and they go talk to the therapist. So the therapist is talking to them, giving them coping skills, or what have you. But our motto is saying, not only does that person or that mom or that dad need to see the individual therapist, but that mom and dad needs to be in a group to where they're solving the issue of what's going on at the school. Because how are you ultimately going to heal yourself and be better if you're not working on finding a solution to the problem that caused you to be depressed and stressed out in the first place? And so these therapists are trained in such a way to where they're not culturally responsive to our issues.
Right,
You
because
know,
it's a whole different ball game than another Concord or whatever, right?
right, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's the new approach that we're trying to influence therapists on. So when I'll backtrack a little bit. So when Conscious
Mhm.
Voices first got started, it was um it was 12 programs that were funded by the African American Innovation Grant, and that grant, or those monies, were set aside to try to figure out what can be done to help improve the services in Alameda County for African Americans. So of those 12 programs that came about in 2012, 2013, Conscious Voices is the only one that's still in existence,
Mm.
which is not anything to like brag about or say woohoo, because this problem that Alameda County said they have has now stalled. Why? Because are we the only ones trying to now improve the services for African Americans? That's what it kind of looks like. If all these
Yeah.
other programs went away that were there, they came about to try to solve this issue, right?
Right.
Um so what Conscious Voices did was, this is one of the other services we offer, and how it has morphed into what I do. Not just me. We have other community educators and peer counselors. But what Conscious Voices did was they put together a curriculum, saying, "Hey, you guys know your services don't work, right? You guys went to school, you got your degrees, you have your practice, but your services. You guys say your services don't work for us." So we went out, we talked to our community, we went out, we talked to other Black therapists. We have community engagement. We're trying to figure out how to improve these services. So Conscious Voices did this research and they put together this curriculum, and they're saying, hey, now you guys come to us so that we can teach you how to better work with our people. Come to us and take our training. So that's another, we offer provider trainings to
Is
help
that
them.
and that is for like doctors and police?
Right, for
Right.
whoever, we want as many people as possible
Right.
to take these
Teachers.
trainings with us, teachers, counselors, anyone who works with our people. We
Right.
we want, we want you to be culturally responsive. Not only that, we want you to understand our motto, and we want you to understand what we're saying is needed to help heal our community.
Right.
So that's another service, right? But while that curriculum was developed and while these were the recommendations to the county, here presents this other problem. And the other problem was, the therapists and, whoever else, because I can't really name names and all that stuff,
Mhm.
basically saying, okay, yeah, we see all this work you did, and we see what you're saying we should do, but who's gonna make us? Who's
Right.
gonna make us take these trainings? Who's gonna make us help us improve our services?
Yeah. Like why? Yeah. Yeah.
I
Right.
already
Right.
went to school and I got all my degrees, so why do
Yeah.
I need to learn some new stuff?
Right.
So there's no law saying this therapist, who has their degree, has to go take another 6-month course to be able to work with our people. There's nothing saying that. No, they just go ahead and get the Medi-Cal, the insurance, whatever, they bill it, they charge it, they see them, and and that's that. So once and Cheryl Crenshaw is the executive director of Conscious Voices. So when she realized that, um then there, and the research also says this too, that when you are being counseled or given advice from, given help from someone that looks like you, is from where you're from, been through what you've been through, sometimes that's more effective. Why?
Right.
Because you're more comfortable with this person, as opposed to a white
Yeah.
male therapist that maybe don't trust because of all of the negative incidences that happen with our people in the medical field, the
Right.
different
Because
experiments they've done on
yeah.
us.
And I know from experience, not just racially, just when somebody that looks like you said, it feels more sometimes like you're actually it can be healing as opposed to conditioning.
Yeah. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but there's a study on NPR, National Public Radio, where they followed medical professionals for a year. And the medical professionals knew that they were being observed and monitored by these researchers. And they were looking for something specific, which is how do the medical practitioners treat people when it comes to race? And even though these people knew that they were being monitored and the kinds of medication they were prescribing and what have you were being checked on, they went about their business just totally, honestly, earnestly thinking that everything was fine. At the end of the study, at the end of the year and some change, I forget exactly how long it was, many medical practitioners were saddened, shocked, and heartbroken when they looked back upon the record and they realized that someone that looked like them, like let's say you were an African American doctor or a Caucasian doctor, if someone that looked like them came in, they tended to prescribe a different set of remedies or medications or treatments for that person than someone who looked different. And it's not like they were intentionally trying to poison these people per se, but it was just sort of like two people come in with the flu, and then the doctor may say, for you, I'm giving you anti this and that and the third. And the other person comes in. It's like, bed rest, orange juice, call me in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And they honestly thought at the time that they were doing this, that they were giving the patient the best possible kind of treatment. But when they realized, it's like, yo, they had the same thing. And for some reason, some subconscious quirk made them more attentive to one than the other. And it's not like they were burning crosses in people's lawns or that they had the desire to do so, but it's just something they couldn't quite help. And I think that definitely speaks to the other side of that, where it's like, as a patient coming in and talking to a therapist that doesn't look like me, I may feel like this person is judging me. Can I really trust and open up to this person? Can they be? Because therapists are supposed to be impartial, right? They're supposed to be neutral. Is this person really neutral? And I may not feel that way talking to somebody that doesn't look like me. You know what I mean? And on the other side of that, they may actually treat me a little bit different and that, I'm not throwing any shade at anybody, but,
Right.
it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's exactly to the point of, a therapist, a therapist with a black client, and they're saying, trying to offer them suggestions like, well, why don't you just, go for a jog in the neighborhood, go for a jog. It's like, no, lady, I can't go jogging in my neighborhood because then I'm going to get harassed by, drug dealer or, a pimp or what have you. I might get shot. Or say, well, why don't you just, go into a different part of the house and turn on some soft music. No, lady, there is no different part of the house because it's 3 of us or 4 of us in the bedroom and it's 2 or 3 people in the living room. So what I'm
Right.
supposed to do, go sit in the bathtub?
Right.
It's
And then
things like
yeah.
Right.
that.
And also going back to what we were talking about earlier, I grew up in Richmond, and we had on a guest a few months ago or a couple of months ago where we talked about this. A lot of us who grew up in Richmond and Oakland have a form of PTSD from some of the stuff we saw growing up, and we never actually got treated for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's affecting us as we're older.
Right. That's exactly why I hold my trauma training every Tuesday at 6 p.m. because I figured out a way to treat myself of the trauma. First, I had to identify that I had it. And because, so much of our PTSD goes undiagnosed, and we don't treat it. Not only that, but we don't realize that stress and trauma are 2 different things. Stress, because we feel stressed out all the time, or we're so common, or we just learn how to deal with it. And you hear, PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, you hear both words together, so you might think they're the same thing. It's just stress, and it's actually not. Stress resolves itself on its own, where trauma, that means that you've had an actual change in brain function, and that needs to actually be treated. Um, and I'm not sure if you guys want to hear a little bit um, of the trauma training just to give people an idea. But like I said, this is exactly why I do what I do, because there is such a great need for us to, heal ourselves, one, but there's also a great need for us to understand that it's okay to talk about it, because a lot, like, we're not even talking about it. Like, who's going to admit, I have PTSD, or who's admitting that, who's talking about it? I think people are starting to talk about it more, but that's why I do what I do on Tuesdays. I commit my time to that, hoping that the information I share can be shared, with family, with friends, and let people know, like, wow, maybe all of us, not maybe, I think all of us have some form, like you said, of PTSD. But anyway, if you guys are interested,
Yeah, definitely.
it's a longer version. I'll try to condense it some. So, basically, to talk about trauma, you have to talk about stress. Stress relieves itself on its own. Trauma, that means there's been a permanent change in your brain function, needs to be treated. there are different parts of your brain. The research talks about it from an evolutionary standpoint, but if you believe in creation, that's okay and everything. You can't deny that there are different parts of our brain, and in our brain, different things. The different parts have different functions. So the stress and trauma part has to deal with your amygdala. That's where the stress response happens. If you've ever heard of fight or flight or freeze, right?
Yeah.
The little example that I give is, let's say a dog comes out of nowhere. Me and my sister are walking down the street. Dog comes out of nowhere, scares the mess out of us. The owner comes and gets the dog. The dog is gone. My sister, she's laughing. She's laughing at me, but I'm still tripping. I'm like, dude, what are you laughing at? It's not funny. I'm really tripping out, looking around. For her, that moment was just an instance of stress. Now she's okay. She's not worried about that dog. She's laughing. For me, that moment was a single traumatic event. The change happened right there instantly, right? And so when you have trauma, what that means is that now you have an overactive amygdala when it comes to certain things, or possibly now it's so overactive, you're processing all information through your amygdala first, meaning you're processing it through the part that deals with your survival mode. Your fight, flight, or freeze. When you perceive a threat, are you going to run away from it? Does your body need to get ready to fight it? Or are you, freeze and stuck and can't do anything? So for my sister, like I said, the stress resolved itself on its own. People have different responses to stress. Not only do they have different responses, but they have different recovery times, right? So maybe somebody else, it might be just an instance of stress, but it might take them 2 or 3, 4 more minutes. So when that initial stress response is triggered, different hormones are released into your body. Adrenaline, glucose, cortisol are the ones that I talk about in the training. Adrenaline is, what your body needs to have that boost of energy. Glucose is sugar, and that's what your body is using to burn for that energy. And this is why.
Is that why? Can I ask you a
Uh-huh.
question? Is that why after an anxiety attack you feel very tired and like deeply tired? I don't know. Maybe everybody has a different feeling to that.
Right. No. People do have different reactions. Everybody reacts differently. But yes, because your body has exuded an extreme amount of energy sometimes. The anxiety, I'm getting to that.
Okay. Sorry.
So the different hormones, adrenaline, glucose, and cortisol, right? This is why diabetics really need to make sure they stay calm, because if they get triggered, then they can have spikes in their sugar without even having eaten anything.
Wow.
Right. And African Americans lead the statistics in cancer, diabetes, heart disease. 8 out of the 10 leading causes of death for African Americans, 8 out of 10 of them are preventable. And people don't realize that. Why are they preventable? If you think about high blood pressure, you think about diabetes, that is severely affected by your diet, right? Your stress levels. So you think about those are behaviors. Your diet is a behavior, and you being triggered is your environment, something that your behavior, how you respond to something, that's a behavior. If you can get control of your stress level and trauma and your mental, then you get control of the physical as well. There's an undeniable correlation and connection between your mental health and physical health. And this is why right now, currently, Conscious Voices has a campaign going on for bringing an African American integrated healthcare center to Oakland. Because when you have your health care and your mental health care combined, it improves your outcomes. And it's, I don't know, it's no wonder or mystery why there isn't an African American healthcare center in Alameda County. Um, Even though we have the lowest life expectancy rate and we lead the statistics, yet there are two um, Latino American health centers, there are two Asian American health centers, and one Native American health center. All the other major ethnic groups have their healthcare centers, but the people who need it the most, the people who usage your services, don't work for, we don't have a healthcare center. So back to what's going on in your body when the stress response is triggered. So, the glucose is released. The other hormone that I'll talk about, because there are other things that happen. This is a brief, this is a condensed version of the curriculum and the research to be able to give it to our people again, to start somewhere, say, hey, think about this, let's talk about this, and, come back and see what else we're doing over here. So those are some of the hormones. The other hormone I talk about is cortisol. Cortisol um, is a very unique hormone because when that's released, um, what that does is it tells the body to shut down the immune system and the digestive system. And the reason is because if this dog is coming at us full speed, we're diverting all of our energy to this threat. We're, we need to focus on that. We don't need to focus on the coronavirus or cancer or pneumonia or the flu germ coming, to get us. We don't even focus on that because if this dog gets us, we're dead. So again, this is when the stress response is triggered. All these things happen. So if we're a people that's stressed out and has a lot of trauma, then every single time we're triggered, our heart starts beating fast. That means our immune system is being shut down. That means our digestive system is being shut down. Our digestive system is being shut down constantly, continuously. We're not digesting the food and we're not expelling the waste. All the waste is stuff that our body doesn't need. So we're not getting rid of it. It's sitting in our gut and it's fermenting. It's toxicity inside of us that's just sitting there. Other things that happen when the stress response is triggered is your heart rate increases. Your heart rate increases. Your blood pressure increases. Um, and not only that, you become, or some psychological effects that can happen would be being hypervigilant, being hyper aroused, irritable, and it also can cause insomnia. So hypervigilant, what that is when you're constantly looking for a threat. So the dog has come, but the dog is gone now. The owner came and got it. But I'm still hypervigilant. I'm still triggered. I'm still looking around. I'm trying to see, is it another dog? Where did that dog come from? Does the owner really, I'm still looking, thinking something bad is gonna happen. My sister, she chilling, she laughing at me, right? You don't, and then hyper aroused is when you're, just overactive, antsy, ready. In our language, hyphy. You triggered, you moving around, you
Right.
jumping, you ready, you jumped on the car, you doing a lot, um, you're hyper
Yeah.
aroused, right? So you don't need to be hyper aroused to be hyper vigilant, and you don't need to be hyper vigilant to be hyper aroused. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you go to somebody's house and your friend takes you to their friend's house, but you've never been there and you don't really like going to new places, going inside of people's house that you don't know. So immediately you're triggered. Your heart starts racing because maybe you had a bad experience before, going into some, or you were just raised that way to be leery of going into new houses, right? But you're triggered. You're in survival mode now, or um, you're looking for a threat, right? Because that's either you're triggered by something else in your past or you're brought up that way, whatever. But you're not hyphy. You're standing there calm as can be. but your eyes are
Yeah.
scanning the room and your heart is beating fast, right? Just by walking into somebody's house
Mm-hmm.
that your homeboy saying that, they're cool. Come on. They're cool. This is my cousin, whatever. But you ain't never been there before. So automatically, new places, and it can be anything, a new job, a new school, what have you. But your heart beating, um, your heart rate increasing, that's your body telling you something's different, something changed. So this is how our amygdala has been getting us in trouble. Our amygdala has been getting us in trouble because initially it was designed, you know, to help us. It was designed to cause us to become extra alert when there's a perceived threat. To prepare us to
Right. Right.
either, fight, to prepare us to run away, or again freeze. Maybe the freeze, as we're evolving, was us camouflaging or something. Or maybe the freeze is just, if I don't say nothing or do nothing, it'll just go away, because some people think like that, right? But the amygdala, there doesn't need to be an actual threat there for it to be triggered. So the amygdala
Hmm.
isn't differentiating between the real or the perceived or the imagined. So how many times have you caused yourself to be, uptight, heart beating, just by thinking of a scenario?
A
Right. So
lot.
again, this.
um,
Oh
can I
yeah, go
can
ahead.
I
Uh-huh.
interrupt real quick? Just I want to say this because it I don't want. Well, if I feel like you're talking directly to me, I suffer from hypertension,
Yeah, me too.
hypertension, anxiety, and I have a lot of digestion problems as well. And one of the things that I, in a way, kind of just feel like this is just normal. Like I'm sure that's why a lot of people don't get treatment, because you feel, even though it does, I do get nervous of certain uh, places or that I go, or when starting a new job, my sleep is thrown off completely for a couple of weeks, or something life change. Stuff like that. It just, I feel like maybe part of the reason why I guess people just think these are all just normal
No, they're
things.
not normal. It's your body talking to you saying, something's not cool. So your body, so that's one thing that, we don't realize, that we are designed so beautifully. We're we really are designed so beautifully, but we've been blinded, or whatever you want to say. We've been disconnected, bamboozled. Whatever the saying is that you want to say, put there. We've been
Yeah.
grossly disadvantaged, just neglected when it comes to the knowledge of who we are. So
Mm.
if you think about what I was just saying, so our body is so smart, right, that when a threat comes, it's saying, hey, like, it's already judging and deciding, saying, we need to take care of that right there. So it diverts all of its energy, to taking care of you. So the body's like, I'm here to save you, I'm here to save your life. Our immune system is there for a reason, you know um but in that instance, it's like, no, that dog, that threat, that trumps, that we'll take care of that later. Um, our,
Oh,
our body
Right.
talks to us in so many different ways.
mm,
So, like, if
excuse
you
me for
ever, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
excuse me for a second, Sandra, but just for our listeners at home, I just gotta say, I question we're having right now about trauma. But for folks at home who may be hearing you discuss the traumatic moments, and they say, well, let's say in particular for people who are listening who may not have these kinds of experience, who maybe live, like, we'll say, in the suburbs, they may say, well, everyone has some kind of trauma or has been scared at some point. What's the issue? And correct me if I'm wrong, Sandra, but I would say to the listeners at home is that what is happening to our folks, Black folks that live in urban areas, is that they're exposed to this trauma on a consistent basis, right?
That's
Guns go off
exactly.
like like guns go off in some neighborhoods like once a week. People are rushed to the emergency room, multiple times. Multiple people have died. Fights go off all the time, and kids grow up in that environment, which is not what you have in the suburbs. So it's like if you're exposed to the
And then
same trauma like almost every day, your brain doesn't have the time to recover. Like if you, let's say, if you were living in a small town in rural Texas and you had one thing happen to you when you were 5, like a rattlesnake almost bit you or did bite you, your brain will have enough time to recover if nothing traumatic happens for the next 10 years. But we're talking about people who experience this dang near every day. So they're in a constant state
and then
of what you're describing, right?
Oh yeah,
and then with
that's
that, sometimes
exactly right. There's something called complex PTSD. And the research also says that protective factors mitigate the damage or the exposure, the negative effects of trauma. And those protective factors, when I talk about it in the training, I call them breaks. You get breaks from the stress or the trauma. But the protective factors are things like safe homes, safe schools, attentive parents, resources. And the number one protective factor that white people have is profiling. They don't, they don't have to deal with that stressful situation of profiling.
And can I ask you one more thing to add on to what the things that you're mentioning? I was just reading about this earlier. I wanted to ask you about it. Intergenerational
Yep,
trauma.
that so the
Ooh.
other types of trauma, and I go over this. It looks like it'll be more of a discussion instead of like a training style. But so there can be a single, instance of trauma. Then there can be chronic trauma. So the single instance of trauma would be like, the dog attack, right? A single instance of trauma, right? For my
Right.
sister, it was just it was just a stressful moment because she recovered from that, but for me, I didn't. Then there's the chronic trauma. Chronic trauma are things like bullying or abusive, domestic violence type relationships, or and you can be bullied at home, you can be bullied at work. Not bullying doesn't just happen at school. And
Right.
then there's the intergenerational trauma has to do with learned behaviors, and this is also can be connected to historical trauma. Historical trauma is anything that has to do with discrimination, slavery, and the reason why intergenerational trauma can be directly connected to historical trauma, being learned behaviors. So, let's say, for instance, and my kids on my kids' side of the family, their side of the family, several of their siblings are different, shades, some lighter, some darker, and their dad, and I didn't even think too much of it back then, but now I think about it all the time when I do my trainings. But their dad would call the two darker children, Blackie. But that's something that his mom and dad did to him, and it's something that his grandparents did to them. Calling each other black. Oh, come here, you little black ass. Come here. So these are learned behaviors, but they're traumatic for that child. For us as a people in general. Other examples of it is, say, like if me and my sister are fighting about my mom in front of my children. There's 3 different generations, and we're modeling to my children, how we resolve conflict, by fighting. And those are, traumatic instances. The other type of trauma, there's epigenetic trauma. And epigenetic trauma is when you can actually see the trauma gene, in your DNA. So the studies that have been done around that were around the Jewish community and the Holocaust, and also looking at the blood of people in America who are descendants of West Africans, and then they went to Africa and got blood samples from West Africans who had not made the Middle Passage. And what the research is saying is that even, if you have that gene, you don't automatically have an overactive amygdala, but you have the potential of expressing that gene. So yes, some people are normally born with that overactive amygdala, with that overactive response to information. So if you're constantly in that part of your brain, you're automatically cut off from your neocortex. So again, from an evolutionary standpoint, our amygdala, which is also referred to as our first brain, our lizard brain, that developed first, and then our neocortex developed. But when the stress response is triggered, you're automatically cut off from your neocortex. Your neocortex is where all the higher functions happen. Conscious thought, reasoning, language, spatial reasoning. So you're cut off from there, and you're lizard brain mode, right? You're making poor decisions. All these hormones are being released. You're hyper aroused. You're hyper vigilant. All these different things happen. And again, how you were saying, being exposed to all these different trauma factors over and over again, that's the complex PTSD. And what that is when you're exposed to varied and multiple traumatic events over and over. If you look at the average, let's say you look at the average 20-year-old in Oakland, right? If they've lived in Oakland for 10 years, and Oakland has been having an average murder rate of 100 deaths per year, that 20-year-old has the potential of being exposed to 1,000 murders. Why? And this is in the research. You don't have to have known the person that got killed, but just being exposed to all these different things, the difference. And you said shootings once a week. Where I grew up in East Oakland, that's like daily. Like you hear gunshots, like you hear, the birds chirping or something. But you're exposed to the sirens, the shootings, different kind of sirens, be it ambulance, police, fire truck. You see the candles on the ground walking to school. You go to school, you hear that it's your friend's cousin, or you hear it on the news right before you go to school. So there's just several different
One thing I know, I'll say on a personal level, and maybe you see this, it's constantly going to funerals definitely has had an impact on me.
right. Not only that, but seeing, the t-shirts, and then even on social media, different times where you
Yeah.
just have to get off social media because for one period, I remember in 2018, for about 2 months straight, it was every week it was somebody new. Everybody, it was somebody that if I didn't know them personally, my best friend knew them personally. So my best friend's hurting, I'm hurting.
Right.
Uh-huh.
How do you think?
Yeah.
Are you guys able to hear me? How do you think will the country will respond to mass shootings?
I don't know what you mean.
Like, well, if you, like you said, if you live in Oakland, you hear gunshots all the time, um, and so I personally have started to kind of filter that information. Where it's like, do I want to go to a place that has huge gatherings, right? Because of mass shootings. And I was wondering if you think that like it'll be something that everybody thinks about.
Oh, you mean like being afraid to go to a gathering because of mass shootings?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
in other words, is everybody now Well, a lot of people more now.
It cut out a little bit.
Yeah, are you asking like, is everybody now more in a way they're experiencing what we experience in the hood?
Yes, thank you, JD. You worded it better.
Uh, that's a good question. I because that's one thing I did hear someone say. It's those mass shootings. In a way, now the nation got to experience what someone in the inner city experiences daily. Um, would you agree with that assessment?
Me personally, I might be a little jaded when it comes to thinking about um the entire country. Like you gotta ask me specifically, like the African American community, or like, because I personally don't think that the whole country ever gets jaded off anything like that. I think that as a whole, I think the whole country, you know, is used, like, it happens and they're on to the next. It's such a microwave type of society. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Eh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were mentioning earlier, with you know, with a lot of people, I'm sure there's like, especially in growing up in, like we grew up in, I grew up in Richmond, and there's multiple things that they can experience because so is it really hard to narrow it down for some people what it is exactly, like what was the trauma, since there's so much
Oh,
happening.
absolutely. I talked to my friend one time, and I try to encourage her to, find a therapist, or, talk about it, and she's like, I have no idea why I'm crying. One day she was just talking about doing the laundry, and just out of nowhere she just broke down and started crying. And I think that's more common than not, not even knowing where to start. And that's why I said, starting off with listening to your body, paying
Right.
attention. When I do my trauma training circles, I open it up with a meditation, because meditation has been scientifically proven to repair and improve brain function. Um, and then I also go into, how I treated myself. I was in a domestic violence relationship for about 9 years, and towards the end, he had become very controlling, and I wasn't, allowed to really go anywhere or do anything. And um, I didn't argue with it. I really tried to convince myself, like, well, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? You have everything here. I lived in a large home. I had, a trampoline, acreage, a pond, just whatever, my own art room, just whatever. I tried to convince myself I didn't
You
need to go anywhere, right?
you
So,
you were a bird in a gilded cage.
right. So
Hmm.
I had a cancer diagnosis in 2018, and when I had that cancer diagnosis, I was trying to figure out, well, damn, how the hell this happened to me? Because I was only 30. How old am I? I was only 34. So and then I had young kids. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, damn, why this happened to me? So I started doing a bunch of research, and this ties into how I started working with Conscious Voices. Um, so I started doing a bunch of research, and this is part of why I do the training. So this isn't so this research comes from the research that Cheryl Crenshaw has done, Conscious Voices has done as an organization, but it's also research that I've read on my own. So for me it was like a no-brainer. It's not something that, somebody's just telling me, here, this is what it is, go tell them, and say it this way. No, I've lived it, I've read it myself, and I understand it. And this is why a lot of us are getting sicker younger, and why a lot of us are, dying younger. African Americans, not only African Americans, but Latinos are right behind African Americans. Getting sicker younger and dying younger. Our immune system has been severely compromised. Our body has been worn down with this excess amount of hormones being released into our systems. It affects our sleeping patterns. It causes insomnia. Why? If you're having adrenaline pumped through you throughout the day, hell no, you're not going to be able to go to sleep, right? And if you're not able to go to sleep, then your body can't repair itself, because that's when your body heals itself, when it's sleeping. So not only is your immune system shutting down, but now your body's not repairing itself because you're not sleeping, because you have insomnia. You're also more irritable. So it affects every single thing. It affects your relationships, trauma and stress.
You know, I want to say this because we had a guest when we first started the podcast, and he shared with us his cancer story, and one of the things that he said was a contributing factor to it was a change in his hormones. And he's a young guy; he was in his 30s, or late 30s. I don't know if you guys remember, um, but that's crazy that you're mentioning this because he also had cancer, and like you said, it was a hormone. I guess imbalance or just a change in his hormones that caused that. So you're saying that the constant fluctuation of emotions, if you're struggling with mental health, can cause. I mean, that can cause a lot of the problems that are hurting us. Overeating, diabetes,
The list goes on. So eight
the
out of
list goes on.
the top 10 things that we die from are preventable, and they're preventable, like I was saying, because it's connected to your behavior. So let's say you're triggered, you're stressed out. What do a lot of us go do? We want to eat, or we want to self medicate, right? Drinking,
Drink,
smoking, any type of all
drink,
that self
smoke
medication, right?
weed.
Because we want to take our mind off of it. We want to do something else, right? So these are all behaviors. And if you can change your behavior, then you can change what's going on inside of your body. Um, and I don't want to forget this. So you know how I was saying that our bodies talk to us. Our bodies are designed beautifully. So,
Yeah.
you ever heard, people say trust
Hmm.
your gut? Like, that saying doesn't come from anywhere. It doesn't just come out of the blue. Our stomach is kind of like our second brain. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, especially nowadays with
Can you repeat that again?
our stomach,
What was the second brain?
our stomach.
Our stomach.
So,
Yeah.
it's not a coincidence that you go somewhere and something doesn't feel right. You feel something in your stomach. None of this is a coincidence. Our feet and our hands and our ears, all of those places have the nerve endings to every other part and organ in our body. um So if there's a certain part on your foot, you can touch it, or if that part is sore, you can look up a foot chart and it'll connect it to a different part of your body. So if you're saying like you're having a lot of problems, with your digestion, if you look up the foot chart, yeah, if you look up the
Yeah.
foot
Constant
chart,
heartburn.
it'll show you like what part of your foot to massage, to be able to help with that. You can also like
Oh.
acupuncture. There's a part of acupuncture that deals with placing seeds on your ears, and that's because on both sides of your ear, when you combine both of your ears, every part of them is connected to a different organ and part of your body. So
Hmm.
But yeah, no, I wanted to go back to, me trying to figure out like how did this happen to me, and what can I do about it to help myself during this treatment process of, healing myself with cancer, curing, getting ready to go through chemotherapy and all this stuff to heal myself of cancer. Um so that's when I read
Right.
like, wow, your immune system is directly connected to how you feel. You know, when you're stressed, you're triggered, you suppress your immune system. When you're sad, you know, you suppress your immune system. When you're happy, your immune system is happy. You know, it sounds like kind of common sense, but people don't think about it in those terms.
Right.
Like, you know, the happier.
I think we're very some in a certain aspects we're very far from common
Right, no,
sense
but this is, like I
society.
said,
You
this
know.
is, if you
True.
want to research, you know, don't take my word for it. You know, look it up and go study and go
Right.
research,
Right.
research it for yourself. And so, so then I had to start paying attention to when my heart started beating fast, right? And you wouldn't believe like all the shit that was causing my heart to start beating fast. Like, oh my gosh, I was being triggered multiple times a day, every single day, because I lived with him. I didn't go anywhere. He didn't I can't say he didn't go anywhere, but you know, he was there every night. He never missed a night of being home, right? So I was being triggered every single day. And I want to say for the last maybe at least 325 days every year for like the last 3 years of our relationship. And I think back to all that, like I could definitely like see and remember when, you know, every day I was eating a pint of ice cream. You know, I was looking in the mirror and like my
Wow.
face began to start looking gray. Like I remember these things, like, oh my gosh, you know, my immune system just being gone for years, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
so they one of the examples that I give, and it's several examples because you know, it's been a long journey of healing and just different stuff. I'm not with him anymore. You know, I've been out of that relationship for over yes, thank you.
Yes,
Congratulations.
congrats.
Yeah.
Happy
So
for you. Um,
before I go into you know, identifying my triggers and healing myself of this trauma, other ways to heal trauma are you know, going to a therapist. They set up a treatment plan for you, and they have different modalities that they use. Like I said, I'm not a therapist, so I'm not trained in that, but I've gone to therapy, so I know some of them. You know, like art therapy. What art therapy does is when you combine words and emotions with colors, you're activating both sides of your brain. When you're activating those sides of your brain, you're taking yourself out of your amygdala, and you're creating new neural pathways. When you create new neural pathways, that's healing and therapeutic, because it's kind of like rewriting your brain. But I'll explain that more in a second. Music therapy. Anytime you exercise, anytime you play an instrument and you're using, you know, your left hand and your right hand, you're activating um, you know, different parts of your brain. And again, you're taking yourself out of the amygdala. There's aromatherapy, there's storytelling, and journaling. Journaling was one of the things that one of the tools that I used. So now if you think about your brain as a field of grass, right? And every time you do
Yeah.
anything, you cross that field of grass and you're creating a new neural pathways. Some things that we have done over and over again to
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, it's a permanent part in our brain and we don't have to create a new neural pathway for that because we do it so often, right? It's automatic. You don't have to think to do it. Um,
muscle memory.
right. So
So
let's
yeah.
say
Okay.
you know, I identified one of my triggers, and one of my triggers was um his phone ringing. So every time his phone rang, I noticed like my heart would start beating really fast. Like, oh wow. So I paid attention to that, like, damn, why am I triggered? You know, again, remember when we're triggered, we're perceiving something as a threat, right? And it can be real or it can be imagined. So I started trying to figure this out. Like, why am I looking at his phone as a threat? So I thought about it. Like, damn, you know, how many arguments have we had over his phone, right? Um, and what was one of the biggest arguments we had? What happened, right? So let's say one time, and when I say so, let's say like these are things that actually happened. I just don't remember the order or exactly when. But one of the arguments, we're arguing. I'm accusing him of cheating, or who is this woman, or whatever. And he's like, I don't have the right to question him. And now I'm like, can I trust him? We already have kids together. Do I want to, leave? All these end of the world type of thoughts start happening. Like, if I can't trust them, then I'm going to forever not be happy. And if I leave them, then I gotta go. Do I have to go to a shelter? Because I lived very far away from. I didn't have any family or friends where I lived. Um, am I gonna have to go to court to fight for custody? I'm gonna have to start all over. I'm gonna be on my own. I'm gonna lose my resources. I'm gonna be homeless. The kids are gonna be hurt. They're gonna be mad at me. All these end of the world type, thoughts happen from that one argument of us. I'm like, I don't want to be with you no more. Whatever happened, it gets so bad to where I'm thinking I don't want to be with them. And if I think I don't want to be with them anymore, then all these other thoughts come, right? So I'm stressed out again. The brain, it can't differentiate between a perceived threat or a real threat. So just because I feel all scared and freaked out, my body, every cell in my body is scared and freaked out, right? Um, so bam, we
Yeah.
we don't resolve that issue. We stop arguing. I don't leave, and we just go to sleep, and then we have sex, and it's the next day, right? Um, but I'm associating all that with the phone ringing, right? So now that has become not just a stressful situation, but that has become a traumatic event for me, and I don't even know it. I don't even realize it, right? So how long was that going on? I have no idea. I have no idea when the phone became a threat to me. I just know all of a sudden now I realize that it's a trigger for me. My heart's racing, and I need to do something about it. So, anytime we respond to a threat differently, we create a new neural pathway in our brain, right? So before that phone rings, I go down that same path. Down that same path is all the end of the world. Um, so now that I'm reading and I'm like, oh, okay, wow. So I need to respond differently, because when I respond differently, then I'm going to create a new path. So let's see some of the things that I did. Phone ring. I go to the bathroom and splash water on my face. That helps for a second. We might have argued later on that day, right? But when that phone rang, I did go to the bathroom. I splashed water on my face. What I do next time the phone ring, I went outside, did 10 jumping jacks, right? Next time the phone rang, I went downstairs to the kitchen and I ate something, right? Again, remember, our stress and trauma can cause us to, form other unhealthy habits.
Like overeating. Yeah.
Right. So bam, the phone ring. What I do
Or react. Yeah.
or what?
Oh no. So you're saying, so instead of just reacting to it because of the fear it brings on you, you do something different to kind of what did that do for you? It
It
just helped you
disrupted.
either
Yeah, it
prepare you.
disrupted my thought patterns. So before,
Okay.
remember, the
Wow.
phone rings, and I go down
Yeah.
that path. Who is that calling him? Is that same woman? Is it a new woman? If it is somebody new, I can't do this relationship. Oh my gosh, how long am I gonna stay in this relationship? No, I can't do this, man. I gotta leave. But if I want to leave, then I gotta, where am I gonna go? I don't know nobody out here. I'm gonna have to go to a shelter. If I go to a shelter, then I'm gonna have to go to custody. Then my kids. I don't have
Wow.
no money. I don't have no job. I don't got nothing saved up. Then I have to get a lawyer. I don't got no money. Right. So when the phone rings, it's a threat. It sends me down that path. That's what I'm used to doing. How many times, does something happen and you had how many conversations? The same conversation you've had. How many times? It can be anything. You know, um, let's say you have a dysfunctional family, and every single time your cousin comes over, it's the same argument about how your mama didn't give his mama the money they owed every single time. So then you'll have that same argument. Your heart's racing. whatever. So before, the phone would ring, and
Yeah.
either I had the argument with him or I had the argument inside of myself, right? So what I'm doing
Right.
is I go splash the water on my face. I am disrupting that argument inside of my brain. I'm disrupting me going down that path, and I'm doing something new. I'm thinking a new thought. Uh,
That's yeah. That sounds really good. I had this Native American friend who told me that they in his tribe, I forgot the name, they believe that whenever you want to react to something out of either anger or fear or stress, your first initial thought usually isn't the one to react with, and it's best to step away and do something, either a walk or think about what you're going to say for at least 5 minutes or more, and then react, because that first initial thought you're reacting in fear or anger.
right.
Is that kind of it sort of reminded me of what you just said. Because yeah, I and I know in relationships when uh you know into a fight, which people who are in a relationship know, and um you answer it, and even the way, even if you're expecting it from them based on the past, but they're not coming at you with what you thought they were, you can kind of be nasty, and like the saying goes, hurt people
Hurt
hurt
people,
people.
hurt people. Yep. Yep. So
Yeah. So on the other what I was gonna say, by not handling this in yourself, you can become the person who hurts other people.
Yes,
yeah, most definitely.
absolutely.
Yep. So again, when you're triggered, when you find yourself being triggered, you find yourself, heart beating, racing.
Mm-hmm.
Take as many, deep breaths as possible, and do something else, and um to calm yourself down. Breathing, like I said, meditation is focusing on your breath. It's some people feel like
That's yeah, that's confusing. What is meditating? Is it like a form of prayer? Am I supposed to be saying something? What for you is it concentrating on the breathing?
concentrating on the breathing. This is what I tell people. Anything that you've done in life, whatever it is, let's say you're first learning how to drive a car. The first couple times you're not gonna really know what you're doing. You're gonna be nervous. Am I doing this right? Oh my god, whatever, right? But the more practice that you give yourself on driving, the better you get at it. So meditation is just like that. Um, Meditation is, again, focusing on your breath. That's where you start off at. You can meditate on anything. Let's say you think about the actual definition of what meditate is. It's to focus on something, to think on something. And people say, oh, I thought meditation, you're not supposed to think about anything, and you're supposed to clear your brain out, and you're supposed to you know there's so many different misconceptions of what meditation is. If you just focus on your breathing, because if you think about it, breathing is everything. If you have no breath, you have no life. Breathing is the foundation of who we are. We focus on so many other things. From a woman's perspective, we focus on our hair, we focus on our nails, we focus on our clothes, our makeup, what have you. When was the last time you checked on your breath? How are you breathing right now? Are you breathing shallow? When was the last time you actually took a deep breath? Um, you know, Breathing is everything. So that's what I focus on when I tell people, how to meditate. You can meditate while you're jogging. You can meditate while you're taking a shower, while you're taking a
Hmm.
bath. I actually love to meditate while I'm cooking because I think it makes my food taste better. And I practice, really just blessing my food and infusing love in it. We're really energy. We're vibrating at a certain frequency, and we really need to get back to the basics. And I made the comment of common sense, and I'm not sure who said it, but they were like, yeah, we're getting away from common sense. But yeah, again, meditation,
Yeah.
just focus on your breathing. You can when you're taking a breath in, you say to yourself, mentally, as I breathe in, I breathe in. And then you exhale, as I breathe out, I breathe out. And you start there. Start with the minute.
I just took a deep breath as you said that. it's I'll say this.
You've already started the work.
I didn't focus on my breathing as much as I do now that I have to wear a mask most of the time. And yeah, I realized how, I never really put thought into it. At one point, the only time I took deep breaths was when I was like smoking, So, but it's such a simple thing that I never really put that much thought into it. And I think that's the case for I'm just speaking for myself, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who think that way. It was like they see that as, and I've heard this before from a lot of people, and I myself have said it, some hippie shit. I'm sure you've heard that too.
Right. No, it's not. It's it's something that, imagine if you were brought up and raised to incorporate meditation in your life daily. As simple as, everybody brush their teeth, you brush your teeth. All right. Did you breathe for a minute after you brushed your teeth? Anything. Just imagine what kind of person you think you would be if you've been meditating as a practice as a child your whole life.
Right. Yeah.
When you say music therapy,
No, when I
is
say
that just
music
listening to
therapy,
music?
I specifically mean playing music, an instrument. When you're you're using your left hand and your right hand. When you combine, explaining, or trying to, like, lyrics, writing lyrics, adding it to melodies. It really goes into activating different parts of your brain. So if you're hearing music, because I don't want to limit music and limit the power of music at all. And then too, I want to try to make sure I stay consistent with the quote unquote research, right? But I really don't do that either. So we all know that sometimes you're feeling bummy and you listen to a song and that can change your whole mood. That can change everything. Like, we know this for a fact. We don't need no research to say anything about that, right?
Right.
So that is therapeutic. That's therapy. Of course that's music therapy. You know what I mean? So it's
Mm-hmm.
and it can do the opposite too. Music can make you feel low and feel shitty. Like, oh, why they turn that song on? You know what I mean? For a long while I could not listen to love songs, period. Any love song, because I didn't believe in that shit no more. And it triggered me, right? And I didn't get that, because some people are like, they can't watch anything gory or anything like, and I'm not that I can't watch it, like, I don't want to. I don't want to watch. I used to be a big, huge, violent, I mean, not violent, but into horror movies and stuff like that. Primarily because my ex really liked that. And I grew up on, Freddy Krueger. Like, I like those movies. So because I liked those movies as a kid and he was into horror movies, I'm like, oh, and I meshed it. But now I'm very selective on anything violent, because I understand and realize how much violence is already just in our DNA. Like, I don't need to add to that shit. You know what I
Right.
mean? I don't. It
Yeah.
how much, so anyway.
Yeah. No. here at the Voice Party, we're very against horror films in general. No, I'm kidding.
I
I'm
was
kidding.
gonna say that
We're
I
big
just
fans.
heard y'all talking about
No,
going to some
Really?
haunted place on one of your other podcasts. I'm just,
no, yeah,
Yeah, you
I'm
know
just
she
kidding.
listens, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, no, I'm just joking. No, what I was gonna say is
Oh, okay.
one of the things that I know, especially with trauma, like I mean, I was gonna ask you because personal experience, like you can associate certain things with your trauma that can trigger it, whether it's a song that's playing or a movie that's playing. So it's like, man, it's just crazy how triggers can literally be
right.
anywhere,
No,
or
yeah, you're absolutely right. They can be. Yep, you're absolutely right. No, I was gonna say I had so many triggers in my
When
last
you, sorry,
relationship.
go
It's
ahead.
ridiculous. I realized when he pulled up because he drove a truck. When I heard the truck pull up, I'm triggered. Like, damn. So when you come home, I'm triggered. Like, I'm you know, no wonder
yeah,
why when you be coming home, like arguments happen. Because again, I'm cut off from my higher functioning part of my brain. I'm making poor decisions. And I can't think logically or reason or anything. I'm in my lizard brain, right? So that's where so much black on black crime. I hate, people when people say, oh, well, what about black on black crime? Like, no, you got to understand what's going on. Like, how can you not expect people to act and be a certain way when they're living in these conditions? So what's happening is, so many of us, so you know how you can see, if you can see somebody, if they're missing a limb, right? You can clearly see that with your eyes. Somebody's missing their leg,
hmm,
and you're at the door, you're gonna hold it open for them, whether they have a prosthetic leg and can walk without a walker, or or
oh yeah,
the most on average, you're gonna hold the door open, right? You can see that with your
right,
eyes. With
hmm
yeah,
us, we can't see into each other's brain, and it's kind of almost like all of us in some shape or way, if you grew up in the ghetto, the hood, or poor, I mean, really kind of growing up black in America, or minority, like you can, oh, so many different things can, have you have PTSD. But anyway, like, we can't see that, and we can't see into each other's brain. And if you start, just start thinking about what all of us have gone through and lived through and experienced, my hope is that we begin to have more compassion for one another, or we're able to identify when someone else is triggered. So if you're able to identify when someone's triggered, maybe they're talking loud and waving their arms, like that's a clear sign that somebody's triggered. Don't engage with them. Like, don't even try to communicate with that person, because they're in their lizard brain and they're cut off from their neocortex, so they can't even have a logical conversation with you anyway. But a lot of times our egos jump in, and we're not about to let this person,
right,
whatever, and now we're triggered. Um, but the more, like I said, the more trauma informed we are, hopefully, we make it more comfortable for others to talk about it. B, when we talk about it together and come together, that's a protective factor. um that helps mitigate the trauma, knowing that somebody's out there doing this work is another protective factor. Because if we're a people together, part of a community, and part of us is out there trying to help us, then we feel like, oh, somebody got our back out there, right? So the more we know, and that's another myth. The other myth is
right.
that we're not out there trying to improve our conditions. No, that's a myth. We're out there. We're spread out, and we need to learn how to connect and support each other better. But we are out there.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I
and oh, go ahead, go ahead.
oh, I also wanted to add this in. There are probably some listeners out there who are,
we got some black and brown listeners out there who may not necessarily live in the hood. They may live, more like the Cosbys, like the Huxtables, right? But even they are subject to at least some level of trauma. Like I'll give you an example. You're watching the news and you hear about another incident of police brutality. That affects you because it's like even if you never ever have to deal with gunshots going off in your neighborhood every other day, you have to live with the fact, the constant reminder that just because you look a certain way, regardless of where you live or where you come from, that the police are probably looking to get you. You know what I mean? And it could be, you may not even think that way on the surface, but it's like a subconscious thing. So then you start seeing police officers patrolling your neighborhood, and that could be a trigger for someone who's probably never even been in trouble in their entire lives or whatever. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
trauma does not discriminate at all. Trauma does
Mm,
not, so a lot of white people, they deal with trauma. All trauma just started, really think about it. Trauma wasn't being talked about in the black community at all. When we first started hearing about PTSD, that was associated with the war vets, right? And
Yeah.
yep.
so when we first started hearing about that, it was like, yeah, PTSD, that's for white people. That's not, or I don't know, at least for me, it was
For
like,
veterans at least.
yeah, like you didn't have a right to talk about having PTSD. Like you suck that shit up and you keep it pushing.
Right, because if you weren't at
My
if you
grandpa
weren't at war, you got
was,
no excuse. That's kind of the
yeah.
whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a grandfather that served over in Vietnam, and he did not like to talk about that, but I understand he had some nightmares when I was growing up. So I have like a tiny peek into what that's like. 'Cause you can't read a person's mind, but
Right.
you kind of know,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
and can I add something to what you were saying about triggers? Especially growing up in the community where you see police brutality, you hear stories, and then there's constant police um, presence with the lights. The lights can be a trigger for some people, and then you go and you see stuff like the George Floyd video, and then you see, like, for me, I saw that, and then I saw, like, police lights in my neighborhood, and it just made me grip the steering wheel a little bit harder. I'm sure that whenever those kind of things are put out there, by the media, it can trigger a lot of people to come home stressed, or I mean, I'm sure you can talk about that more, about like
Oh yeah, that affects everybody, black,
everybody,
white,
right?
everybody. Because I mean, even like again, like I try my best to I try my best to really see everyone as energy,
Right.
human. I really try my best to live that way and understand that my outer is just a reflection of my inner. um
Mm,
but because of my own personal lived experience, with which is unique to me and only me, I choose to be this way, talk about these things, and this is who I am. I don't know how I wouldn't be able to feel like I'm doing my kids a service if I didn't do this kind of work. So if they, as they get older, well, mommy, all these different problems in the world, what did you do to try to help? This is what I try to do, baby. You know what I mean? Like, so that's why I do what I do. But I know that affect, like, the media, and it's so sad because the media can be used in such a beautiful way, and yet
Yeah.
it's not. The media can. I just heard this other thing about there's something like, what we're saying, something like people, there's a generation of people that are giving up on life because of climate issues, like
climate change.
climate despair. So like they, because now they're 30 something and they've been hearing about climate change their whole life now, and why hasn't the government done anything to, help with the climate issue? And so, I see, I don't know, I'm assuming white suburban kid is talking about, this hopelessness. And I'm just like, yeah, join the club. But, no, just my point is the media can cause triggers in everyone. And that's, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
I mean, it's an unfortunate side effect when you are exposed to repeated news stories, and
Yeah.
some of it's overblown, but depending on what it is, it's like, well, we need to hear what's going on in the world. Do they repeat the climate change issue may be a little too much? Possibly, but it is an important, like the goal ideally is that we talk about this so that we can change it. And I don't know, I was talking with some students of mine like the other day, and they were just kind of, these are like fourth and fifth graders, and they were saying, gosh, like between the virus and the comet crashing on the planet, that because you heard about that supposedly there's an asteroid, I think, that, or a comet, or no, it's an asteroid that's coming like close to Earth in November. It may or may not hit. It just kind of depends. And then climate change, with all the things happening because of that, the kids are just like, the world's gonna end. The whole world is gonna end. And if you take that on and you feel like the world is really going to come to an end, it can lead to depression or trauma. But the key thing to remember with this sort of information, at least with climate change anyway, is that they're not just giving it to you for doom. They're giving you that information so that you can be informed, and maybe we can do something about it. I think that's the ideal mission of journalism, is we're going to give you the good and the bad news. And if we inform people, people are going to make decisions to make stuff better or to change things, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're doing right here in this podcast. Right now we're talking about
I
trauma
think for me,
and healing so that people can learn something and maybe they can make a change in their own lives.
oh yeah,
We're the media.
look into themselves, into their own lives, and it's like, do I have any trauma that I'm that's affecting the way I behave? Because that I think some of us.
No. Yeah, I was gonna say ideally that's what it's supposed to be, but I think that long pause in silence was like, yeah, but we know that the mass media has a different agenda, so
Mm.
No, they're not. They have nothing but good intentions for us.
Depending on your news outlet, yeah.
I mean, the fact that
Everybody has their
when they
own
talk about
spin, and
climate
everyone
change,
wants ratings, and it gets complicated.
What were you saying, Gaspar?
no, that when I do hear the conversation about climate change, is it real or not? It's not a real conversation. It's not like, how do we fix it? What can we do? And pretty much any issue to me seems to be like that. Even the pandemic, it's like for months they were talking about masks. Should we wear them or not? They don't get past one little thing just to kind of keep us distracted and keep us talking.
In a way, like we were talking
That's how it
about,
feels.
it's easier to control someone that's stressed. It's easier to control someone that has problems.
yep,
So
because they're not thinking clearly.
right, and that's easier to. Yeah, how do you get someone to vote for you? You put out a problem,
That's
and
what-
then you say you have a solution to that problem. So, and I wanted to ask this to you. How can we, as just regular citizens, help your organization?
Oh, we are
Like,
a nonprofit, so you can always just donate,
okay,
straight to us. But what we are actually, we do have something coming up right now. We have our first annual online holiday auction, and how we want the auction to go is we want to feature Black-owned businesses, and we want so let's say if you guys as the show wanted to participate in the online auction, I say, can you go buy something from a Black-owned business, preferably in Alameda County in Oakland, a Black-owned business, and you donate that item to us. So what you're doing is, A, you're supporting a Black-owned business, and B, you're also supporting uh African American mental health organization. So you're supporting two ways. And then three, when we auction that item off, the person who buys that item is supporting two Black owned run organizations as well. And that you can support in that way. The other way you can support is promote the trauma training that I do every Tuesday at 6 p.m. We also have um a women's circle, a men's circle. We have a Thursday night support circle that's not really it doesn't have a specific agenda. It's just a time space that we hold. Um and those are, and talk about it. Talk about it, meditate, make that a part of your daily routine, because ultimately we want to, affect change.
Right.
And that's the number one way that you can support the organization, because it's not about us. Like, it's really about helping to change our community, empower our community, talk about it, meditate. We get on the phone and we talk, however long, a minute here, a minute there. That's one thing. Like, this organization has changed my life already. If I've been doing this, since May, and I attend 3 to 4 circles a week at minimum, I'm meditating 12 minutes more a week, because every circle we meditate for 3 minutes. So at minimum, I'm just doing that every week. I've been meditating. How many minutes have you meditated this week? Well, at minimum for me, it's been changing my life, doing that, improving my health, meeting with my people, meeting with other people who want to push back on the system together. So, like, clearly defining your pushback amongst your, in your life, your family, your friends. Clearly defining it, doing it. That's how you support us, by making that change in your own life. Because that's what it's really all about.
Right. No, that's a beautiful thing you guys are doing, and I'll definitely be we'll talk amongst ourselves and decide what to do, but we'll definitely be participating in that
And
auction.
so, yeah, when you participate, the website is actually a little behind schedule, but
Okay, but we can
now
where can people contact you?
you can
Wanted to
contact us at info@consciousvoice.org.
info at consciousvoice .org and you have a website also, right?
And the website is www.consciousvoice.org.
Okay, and then if people wanted to reach out to you personally, are you is that something you do, or we just have them email you on the website?
If you email info@consciousvoice.org, I have access to that. We're also
Oh,
on
okay.
Facebook. If you go on Facebook, you'll find the links to our to our different circles as well.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No. I. Because I can see how this can be, helpful. I mean, even for me. I mean, you guys. You guys are. Is it only for the Alameda residents, or is it anybody?
No, it's anybody.
Anybody.
So the women's group is geared toward African women. I mean, African American women, or African women from the African diaspora. The men's circle as well. My trauma training circle. My personal goal is, like, I want to connect with all the people that that, you know, don't necessarily want to go to a therapist. I mean, I want to connect with everybody, but that's why I started this. You know, I wanted to fill that space or gap, you know. But no, the more people who are trauma informed, the better. So if all the, you know, all the doctors and all the, you know, police officers or whoever who work with our community are trauma informed, you know, the idea is that they'd have more compassion. You know, what is that? If I, you know, I've lived your exact same life, then I'd be exactly who you are. You know, if I lived every day of every moment, you know, of what you've lived, I would be the same person. And so we try to, you know, get people to understand that, you know, something has been happening to us. This is not who we are as a people. That negative stereotype that you have about us, that, you know, we're aggressive, we're dumb, or we're lazy. Like, no, that's the stress response. Because what happens in the stress response? You know, you fight, flight, or freeze. You're, you know, you're aggressive, or you're running away from responsibility, or, you know, you're trying to get away, or you're freezing and you're not doing anything. You know, like, no, that's not who we are as a people. It's something's been happening to us. Slavery is not that long ago. You know, it's okay to talk about it. You know, doesn't matter that we have a black president, you know, had a black president. Like, none of that matters. Something is happening inside of our brain. We need to, you know, oh, also, like, the cavalry's not coming to save us. Hello, people. We got to know that too. So because the cavalry's not coming,
Yeah.
we got to heal each other. And, you know, definitely a shortage of, you know, black or African American therapists. So you can't even get somebody that look like you if you want it. So,
Right.
you know, we got to talk about it. We got to teach each other about what's going on and how, you know, and how it worked for me. And so again, that's why I do what I do. This is how it worked for me. First, I had to stop and pause, pay attention to my breath, pay attention to my heart. Um, you know, and then from there, think different thoughts, and this worked for me. Like, it might take, you know, a time, you know, talk, the more we talk about it, the more we create this culture of let's heal each other, let's take care of each other. Because I
Amen.
wasn't raised that way, and so I'm trying to be the change I want to see, you
Right.
know.
That's something I think we can all get behind on. Um, Sandra, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing with us
I know we've
your
been on the phone
story.
for hella long.
Oh no, I don't want to. I don't want to take too much of your time. No, it's been great because, like I said, you made me think about a lot of stuff that I you know, I feel like someone told you everything about me, and then and then you just kind of like in
Yeah.
you're like in there like, who the fuck told her all my problems, bro? Like, what?
You too, not just me.
And you're just like, this is an
It's like she read our
intervention, but
minds.
yeah, I know this is an intervention, and you're
Yeah.
just like indirectly telling me my stuff, and but it's a strange year on top of you know everything that's happening on everyone's personal life. It's also a strange year, so I'm sure you know everyone's internal triggers are ticking right now. And I think it's very important what you're doing. So like I said, whatever we can do to help, we will. And hopefully the people listening, you know, can reach out and you know we can start healing ourselves. But again,
Yeah.
I would love to have you on again in the future where we could talk more about if you're up for it.
Yeah, most definitely. I enjoy myself, and I actually, you know, I want to be able to learn from you guys as well too, because I don't know anything about doing a podcast and or anything like that, and you know, maybe we want to be able to do that as an organization too. So maybe you guys can help us do that. The
Oh
last thing
yeah,
I wanted to say was, if you do donate something to the online auction, whatever item that is, it'll be able to say, who donated it. And if you have a website or anything like that, your website will go on there and your logo will go on there as well.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Indeed.
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 Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
we have a trauma therapists that go to the high school that I work out every year through Catholic Charities, and they give us a brief overview of what it may be like for some of our students. But I feel like I've learned more in the 2 hours talking with you, close to, than I have with the no disrespect to the Catholic Charities folks. They're great, and they're just giving us the bite-size intro before more in-depth things. But thank you so much,
Oh yeah.
Sandra.
This is the voice party's intervention. And no, it's it definitely does make me think more about, because like I said, after an episode of anxiety, I could, for me, I definitely feel a difference in my body.
Oh,
My
let me give you guys two more tools, because
Yeah.
I know that you work with
Sure.
kids. There's one technique for trying to teach someone or younger kids, anyone. Well, there's a big echo. How I teach my kids, or I start them off, is I tell them to smell the flowers, because that has you, breathing and inhaling through your nose. And then I tell them, I hold up my finger and I say, blow out the candle. So I tell them, smell the flowers, blow out the candle. If you want to get silly or goofy, you can say, hey, did somebody pass gas? Who passed gas? Can you smell that? Somebody smell that. Smell, everybody start laughing. And the laughter will disrupt, whatever anxiety might be trying to come in, or whatever type of energy that you want to disrupt. Or you can say, I smell cookies. Does somebody smell cookies? And then, as they're inhaling, and then you tell them, oh, blow out the candle, and you blow out your mouth. The other,
Exhale.
I've ruined everyone's trust with that one, because I would pass gas and then ask people if they smell the cookies, and I don't think that one. Yeah, I think I ruined that one for myself.
Ruining therapy since fourth grade.
Sorry.
The other technique to help relieve stress and anxiety is the clench technique. And what you do is you start off, you squeeze your fist real tight. You move up to your forearms, your upper arms. You squeeze real tight. You squeeze your shoulders, squeeze your chest and your stomach, squeeze your thighs, your butt, and your calves and your feet. Squeeze and squeeze your neck and your jaws, and you squeeze and you squeeze and you squeeze and you squeeze. Then you let go and inhale. And you exhale. And you inhale.
I don't know how the listeners are feeling at home, but it sounded like you were actually doing it on the phone with us. Like I could.
I was.
Yeah.
I was doing it too. Then I took a bite of the muffin. I'm sorry. I was
You're supposed to be trading in a new habit for the old filthy one, JD. Look at you backslide.
I'm putting it away now.
JD's like, this is how I deal with my trauma on a daily basis.
Go put water on your face.
Yeah.
Out of the muffin.
Oh man.
Replacing that glucose that your body just burned. I see you, JD.
So the idea though is that a lot of times we don't realize we're holding stress. Sometimes, we walk around at a constant, let's say we walk around at a constant 7, right? And when you do that, you push yourself past, 10. Maybe you walk around at a 10, but when you clench and you clench and you clench, you push yourself past the 10. And then when you let go and you release, you're below wherever you started at. And what you're doing is you're reminding your body what it feels like to relax.
Which
a lot of times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We don't even realize that we're holding the stress and the tension. So if you make that a practice of doing that, every 2 hours, You're taking deep breaths more because that clench and that release will cause you to just take a deep breath, and then you're reminding yourself what it feels like to relax.
Which is something that a lot of us don't know how to do. And aside from other little things that I guess, I know I've developed over time, which we just experienced. And when someone, especially I did this in relationships, when someone would bring up something that needed to be talked about that was serious, I would use humor as a way to avoid getting to the real serious stuff. And I know that comes from not liking when it comes to when the conversation gets too real and it's about me.
Defense mechanism.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but I don't want to keep you up too late. I like I said, I really appreciate a lot of the stuff that you taught us, and like Joaquin said, it was, I learned a lot from this more than I did therapy a long time ago, and I never went back, which was a big mistake, but it was a long time ago. But it definitely got me thinking about it more now, because there's a lot of things that you mentioned that made me, it's not something I paid attention to before. I know like diet seems like something I try to focus on. I mean, not right now, I'm eating a muffin, like I said, but it's something that, but I know that's not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is something else.
It's something else.
It's something else. And I know that a lot of people listening maybe are, experience the same thing. Is, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. But if you don't really change, and you mentioned, you think of your brain as a field of grass. And it's like, what I was picturing, that I'm picturing myself like with a weed whacker, just with all the bad habits I've created over time. And oh man.
Well, what happens though is when you choose a different thought and you choose a different response, you're not going down that same path. So then the grass can grow there again.
I gotta build a tunnel at this point.
Yeah, your grass is all brown and
brown. Yeah. There's a cactus
trampled
growing for some
over.
reason. Yeah.
No, it's all good though. Keep in touch. I don't know if you guys are on Instagram. I don't know. Tag me, follow me too. But I do a lot of spoken word poetry.
Oh yeah, okay. We could do an episode on that.
Yeah, just hit me up and check me. Tuesdays are really actually pretty open because I do my trauma training at 6, and then I chill for the rest of the evening. Like, oh yeah, I did that. I did it again. I'm keeping my commitment, and it feels good. Because I feel like I'm doing my part.
Okay.
So Tuesdays are a really cool time actually.
All right, yeah. No, I maybe we can do more episodes, and as I slowly slip more into madness, and you can document the progress.
Sign you up for Arkham, huh?
Yeah, right. No, but like I said, we really appreciate it, and we hope to hear from you again. And also, thank you for coming on the Voice Party.
All right, y'all have a good
guys.
evening.
Yeah, everybody, all the listeners, you guys have a good night. Thank you for listening. We're out.
All right.
And that was the Voice Party. We are out.